We can start by acknowledging that there are only two ways to grow any kind of business: acquiring more customers and getting each customer to buy from you more and more often. That means as I've said before, life cycle marketing is not something that it's very common, because we have this interpretation over how marketing teams should be looking. We have the email teams, the social media teams, we have the product teams, and so on. But what's happening is that this separation, these clusters, these silos are actually affecting the whole customer journey, because customers must be, let's say, passed from one step to another in the customer journey. And while the companies are having this separate clusters of activities, the customers are having their transitions from one step to another. So if we rely solely on acquiring more customers in such a competitive market, especially for business models that are needing different type of let's say they need customers to buy over and over again. Let's say if you're selling coffee or if you're selling tea, then you must be relying on customers that you've already acquired. So that means you can't rely solely on acquisition. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of the CVO Live. Today, I'm all by myself, like Celine Dion used to say in that old school melody, if you recall it. Dennis is traveling, so that means you're going to be only with me today. And in order to not to bore you too much, I think I'm going to teach you something. And that being said, that today's session is going to be like a training. I'm going to help you understand the e-commerce growth formula, which is the prerequisite of improving customer value optimization. Many companies are disregarding these aspects because they are being, let's say, trained or brainwashed into thinking that acquisition marketing is all that that is needed. However, is not that, as you suspect already. What is the most important thing is to analyze the whole customer journey. So I think life cycle marketing is what's going to happen in the next few years. And if you're here, that means you're going to be at the forefront of what's going to happen in e-commerce. So let's see. I'm going to share my screen because I've also prepared something with you and for you, not with you. All right. So the today's session is going to be about how to increase customer lifetime value and decrease customer acquisition cost. We can start by acknowledging that there are only two ways to grow any kind of business: acquiring more customers and getting each customer to buy from you more and more often. That means as I've said before, life cycle marketing is not something that it's very common, because we have this interpretation over how marketing teams should be looking. We have the email teams, the social media teams, we have the product teams, and so on. But what's happening is that this separation, these clusters, these silos are actually affecting the whole customer journey, because customers must be, let's say, passed from one step to another in the customer journey. And while the companies are having this separate clusters of activities, the customers are having their transitions from one step to another. So if we rely solely on acquiring more customers in such a competitive market, especially for business models that are needing different type of let's say they need customers to buy over and over again. Let's say if you're selling coffee or if you're selling tea, then you must be relying on customers that you've already acquired. So that means you can't rely solely on acquisition. So that means the B option should be taken into consideration more and more for multiple reasons. At this moment, we are seeing that the cookies are deprecating, and that means the customer acquisition costs are going up. Another aspect is that we have this approach where we have 4 out of 10 companies starting to sell online. So basically, we have 4 out of 10 companies which are selling online at this moment are selling through because they've started post-pandemic, and that means we need to understand that this type of game is changing, and that means we should be changing as well, because if you don't change what you're how you are tackling your business, you can't expect for different results, right? All right, so going further, I think one other aspect that we should be looking at is that we have this approach where it's not so sexy to claim something like, hey, we retained 200 more customers. It's more sexy to focus on things like, hey, we acquired 1,000 new customers. But mainly, I'm going to address these topics in the future. And one important element from the whole from this approach is that we are all relying on a bad formula, on the common growth e-commerce formula, which is broken, right? If we don't have the needed elements, then we can't expect to have outstanding results. So the common e-commerce growth formula looks like this. We have traffic, how many visitors we have. Then we have the conversion rate, how many of them are buying, and we have the AOV, the average order value, how much each of them are buying. And that usually means growth in the heads of most of the e-commerce marketers and experts. The cruel reality is that that's not the case. So mainly what's happening is that the actual growth e-commerce formula is a bit more complex than it's common at this moment. So we need to focus also on other aspects. So we have the traffic multiplied by the conversions, and that means the customers, but we also have this ratio between customer lifetime value and customer acquisition cost. So that means growth. So because it's not only how much you are getting from a customer, it's not only how many customers you are acquiring, but it's also how much you are spending to acquire those customers. So basically, if you can look at this formula, if you track this thing, you will be in a position to understand if the business is going up or if the business is going down. So mainly, that being said, looking at the customer lifetime value, we need to understand that there are many aspects that are showing if the CLV is good, and there are factors that are affecting customer lifetime value. Things like net promoter score or customer effort score are let's say, showing how good is the business at providing an outstanding customer experience, while margin is also affecting the CLV. So if you want to increase CLV, maybe you can simply source other type of products so that you are more profitable. And another element that could be showing how good is the CLV is to focus on RFM segmentation. That's allowing you to focus on the best customers that you have, the ones that bought most recently, most frequently, and they have the highest monetary values. So the context today is showing that acquiring customers is more expensive than ever. And that means we should be focusing on the whole life cycle marketing, as I've told you before. If we look at the traffic cost only from Facebook, we can see that the Facebook CPC has grown 8 times, while retail e-commerce sales worldwide have increased by only 1.6 times, which means the media companies are winning this game. So how can we improve a business if we are not having all the elements, right? So I prepared this material for you. It's called the e-commerce growth formula, which takes into account also the growth generating factors. Just a second to make sure that it's opening. All right, so let's focus on these levers of growth, right? These 6 different levers of growth. Let me also do them differently, and this is the best case scenario, and basically that's it. So mainly we have these KPIs, right? We have the traffic, we have the conversion rate, we have the purchase frequency, which means numbers of orders per number of customers, right? So how many, in this case, we have 3.4 orders per customer. But in reality, let's say for an average fashion store, that's about 1.5. Then we have the AOV. Let's say that it's $80. Then we have the customer retention rate. Let's pretend that it's 20%. Then we have the customer acquisition cost, how much it's costing the company to acquire a customer. So basically that means the total marketing spend for customer acquisition, which takes into account multiple elements. It takes into account the media buying or link building, let's say, if you're doing SEO or content production. It takes into account the tools that you're using to acquire new customers. It takes into account the wages of your team and also the agency fees, the overhead, everything that you're spending in order to acquire a new customer. And that total figure is divided by the total number of newly acquired customers in that period, right, that you're analyzing. Then we have the gross margin, which is the difference between the revenue and the COGS, right? So the cost of goods sold. And then we have the number of customers. An important aspect here is that you can already see what is the customer lifetime value, which basically in this example, it's margin per order multiplied with the orders per customer. So with the purchase frequency and minus the customer acquisition cost. So as you can see it over here, we have it, we have before, which is purchase frequency multiplied by the AOV, multiplied by the gross margin, which and then multiplied by the customer lifespan. While customer lifespan in years means how much it is predicted for a customer to spend, to stick around, to buy again from you. What's the total time interval when you can expect for a customer to buy from your store in years? And the formula for the customer lifespan is this one. So if we have a customer retention rate of 20%, then the customer lifespan is going to be 1 over 1 minus the customer retention, or 1 over the churn. So churn or customer retention, however you wanna call it. So the difference, basically these are in mirror. What's remaining after you subtract the churn. So basically you have this formula, and in this example, the customer lifetime value is $53. Then we have the initial revenue by this cohort, right? How much would this cohort generate in terms of the revenue? In this example is 144,000. Then we have the total customer acquisition cost, which you need to check on these figures that these are correct, because it's that principle, garbage in, garbage out. And then you will have this figure here, 25 is the customer acquisition cost, and if you have 1,800 customers, that's going to be the total customer acquisition cost. Then we have a projected revenue per cohort taking into account the purchase frequency and also the projected gross margin per cohort, which is at almost $50,000. So an important element here is that we have this ratio, which is customer lifetime value over CAC, right? So this is a very important ratio, and usually, as a rule of thumb, you need to keep it at 3:1, right? So you should be getting at least 3 times more in terms of CLV, in terms of future value from a customer than you are paying to acquire that customer, right? So in this example is 2.1. So we want to increase that. So let's look now on the right? So far we have been looking at the terms, which these are the terms, but let's focus on the uplifts and let's see the scenarios, right? Because we have the best case scenario where we would be improving all the factors, the growth generating factors by 20%. We would be improving the traffic, by 20%, we would be improving the conversion rate by 20%. But we also have the purchase frequency, AOV, customer retention rate, and we would be decreasing the customer acquisition cost by 20%. As you can see in this example, this is the impact in terms of the margin for all of those levers. So mainly, if we decrease the customer acquisition cost in this example, that's going to be the best in terms of profitability, but not also in terms of the margin uplift. So as an e-commerce leader, you need to decide if you are after profit or if you're after growth. If you want to acquire market share and if you can afford to pay even less than 2.1 per in terms of CLV to CAC, then there you go. That means you have money to burn, and that's great, because if you can afford to do that, that means you will be able to acquire market share. And we all know the example from Amazon that basically had this strategy for years, right? They had something like 18 years without earning anything, zero profit. They've been losing money for 18 years in a row, but they could afford to do this because their game was on the long run. So mainly that's the power of achieving growth with the money from investors. But if that's not your case, let's look at how to do it, and also focusing on profitability. So in this example, with this data set, that's showing us that these three scenarios are the best. So if you'd be in this case, the best would be to focus on increasing the purchase frequency, increasing the traffic, and increasing the increasing the conversion rate, the AOV, and the purchase frequency. So those three would be generating most of the gross margin. So most of the gross margin from this cohort would be coming if you improve this by 20%. But let's for the sake of argument, let's look at another example. We have 200,000 visits. The conversion rate is it sits at, I don't know, let's say it's 2.4%. Let's imagine that we have a 2.7 purchase frequency. As you can see, things are changing. Or if we have a 1.1 purchase frequency, see? So mainly those things are changing according to the initial data set. So if your customer retention rate would be at 25%, that's going to, the difference is going to be way higher than it used to be. So what I suggest here is to take into consideration what's going on with your particular e-commerce, and to mind the fact that if you don't monitor these things, you're not going to be able to achieve sustainable growth, because the trap is to optimize for local maxima, right? If all you are doing is to increase traffic or to increase conversion rate, or on the contrary, to focus only on the customer retention rate without having new blood in your business, right? Acquiring new customers, then you would be losing the opportunity. So basically, that's this exercise with the e-commerce growth formula. I dare you to use it. You have this opportunity over here. That's the link that you can be using. If you have any questions regarding the e-commerce growth formula, if you think I'm wrong, if you think is not working for your business model, let me know. I'm a LinkedIn person, and you can find me over there. That being said, let's go on with what can we do if we decide, or if we realize that it's the best to focus on the customer lifetime value or purchase frequency, right? So we have this methodology, and the three pillars of optimizing the customer lifetime value are these ones. We have the acquisition, we have the conversion pillar, and we also have the customer retention pillar. So in order to achieve this type of optimization, you need to understand that the most neglected activity from any company is the customer research, right? Most of the e-commerce companies, most of the marketing teams are neglecting this part, because they all fall into the trap of thinking that, yeah, we know who's the customer, we know why they are buying, but it's that saying from Peter Drucker that most of the companies don't know why their customers are buying their products. So that means they don't even know what they are selling, because people are not buying products, they are buying progress, right? So they hire products to make progress in their life. So customer research, as you can see it over here, is the first thing that should be done. So I think that's the most neglected activity. So it all starts with the customer research. So customer research will lead in terms of the acquisition. If you do your homework properly, the customer research is going to lead to better targeting, is going to lead to better creatives, and of course is going to lead to better ROAS in these hard times where ROAS is going down like crazy because the algorithms are not working as they used to. So that's the beauty of customer research in acquisition. But guess what? In conversion rate optimization, you also need customer research. You need to identify who's the ideal customer profile, why they are buying, what they are buying, what stopped them from placing an order. So this customer research is at the forefront of improving the customer, conversion rate, right? And the customer research is also leading to better user experience, to better landing pages, and to more relevant messaging and a better conversion rate down the line, because that's how it works, right? If you want to just tweak the website without knowing why the customers are buying, then you will be, let's say, missing out on a huge opportunity, meaning that you will not know what you are doing. You will just scratch the surface of the optimization. The last pillar of customer value optimization is the customer retention, right? We have this huge debate about what's more important, customer retention or customer acquisition. It's not that. It's like, what's the most important, the left hand or the right hand? For some business models, of course. If you're selling mattresses, retention is not that important. But if you're selling coffee or if you're selling grocery, is the acquisition more important than retention? Can you neglect retention? Can you afford to have your customers coming and buy some beer one time from your grocery supermarket? No, you can't. So that means customer retention is also important. However, they are both completing the picture of e-commerce growth. So the customer retention also needs customer research, because if you identify who are your best customers, why they buy, what they buy, and what would stop them from buying again, then you will be in a great position to understand how to do onboarding. So a caveat here is that onboarding is the most impactful campaign after the customer acquisition campaign. And that's happening due to the fact that recency, out of the recency, frequency, and monetary value, is the most impactful one from those three aspects, right? So if you catch, let's say, if you use the time properly, so if you understand what is the time interval when customers are open to buying again, then you will be in a great position to convince them to buy again, right? And that's happening due to the fact that the ones that are buying most recently are the most willing to buy again. The ones which are buying more frequently are more willing to buy again. And the ones that bought the highest, right? So they have the highest monetary value, they have high CLV, are also open to buying again. However, from, let's say we have 3 customers, the one that bought in the last 2 weeks, one that bought 5 times, but 1 year ago, and one that bought, I don't know, 6 times your AOV, but only one time. So out of those 3 customers, the one which is going to be more open to buying again is going to be the most recent one. And that's why the onboarding campaigns are crucial. However, you can't focus on customer onboarding unless you know if the customers are happy about your products. So that means we get back to square one. We need to understand if the customers are happy, and if they are not happy, to fix that first, because no amount of marketing is going to fix a bad product. Going further, customer research in the customer retention phase leads to better remarketing, to better customer retention as well. So mainly it's also helping you to become a brand that is loved by the customers. And after retention, of course, you have amplification. You have happy customers that start to talk with their peers about how cool your products are, how cool your company is. So going further, we talk today about growth not being equal with the growth generating factors. And the last thing that I want to share with you is the story of B Fashion. It's a company that I had the pleasure to work with. Two great founders, fantastic people. They grew the company very, very fast. They got in 2015 to 11 countries, 90 employees. But when I got in touch with them and I looked at their initial symptoms, everything looked great, right? So they had 95% year-over-year growth in revenue. However, they had 20%, less than 20% customer retention. Their NPS was less than 40, and the year-over-year customer lifetime value was actually lower by 20%. And that's the trap. The trap is that if you rely solely on the financial records, you are not looking at the cohort analysis, you are not looking at the customer segments, you are falling into this trap thinking that, hey, the business is going great because we are doubling each year against the last year. The harsh reality was that that company no longer existed. So back in 2019, they stopped their activity. They were present in only one country, and that was it, less than 10 employees. What happened with this company was that their customer lifetime value wasn't there. So they weren't selling products that sticked. They had a low NPS. That means their customers weren't happy, and you want to avoid that. So in order to avoid that, you have to understand this Pareto's law, right? So roughly, for many events, roughly 80% of the effects come from 20% of the causes, and that's true in e-commerce as well. So you need to focus on your best customers, to understand why they buy again, and to make sure that you're providing fantastic products, outstanding customer experience, so that you can make them stick around. And not all the customers are created equal, right? So some customers are better than the others. The best ones, we call them the ideal customers, right? We also call them the soulmates. In our technology in Reveal, we call them the default label is soulmates, but you can name them however you want: super consumers, best customers, whatever, loyal customers. But the best ones are the ones that you should be after. From our analysis, we realized that one single ideal customer profile generates margin as much as 376 low value customers. We call them the breakups, right? The ones which are having a low value, they buy only once, and they haven't bought in, I don't know, 1-2 years. And that's happening because if you subtract the customer acquisition cost from the CLV, you will see that from the first order, if it's a low order, you are barely breaking even. But most of the time, there are a lot of companies which are losing money from the first order. So my suggestion here is to monitor your best customers, to do customer research so that you can improve your growth for your e-commerce. That's for another episode, how to improve the customer lifetime value and decrease the customer acquisition cost. It all stands in the customer value optimization methodology, which is the CVO methodology. I hope that was helpful for you. If you have any questions, you can let me know via LinkedIn. And I'm looking forward for our next episode of CVO Live. Until then, stay safe, make peace, say a prayer for Ukraine, and we'll see you next week.